Ladies and gentlemen, most people have dreams, but only a few ever make them real. It's not because the others are less intelligent or less talented. It's because they wait. They wait for the right time, the right mood, the right opportunity. But let me tell you something. The right time will never come. The world will never send you an invitation saying today is the perfect day to start. You must push yourself to act even when you don't feel ready, even when you're scared, even when you're tired. Because the truth is simple. Nothing changes until you move. When people have an idea, the first thing they usually do is try to make it perfect before they start. They spend weeks, months, sometimes even years waiting for the right design, the right plan, the right moment. But here's the truth. Perfection does not exist in the beginning. Perfection is the result of action, not the requirement for it. I have seen too many people with brilliant ideas who never started because they kept adjusting, kept preparing, kept polishing. They were afraid to make mistakes, afraid to be judged, afraid to fail. But what they didn't understand is that the fastest way to learn, improve, and grow is to start, make mistakes, and fix them along the way. Think about a baby learning to walk. The baby doesn't wait until the day it's sure it will never fall. It stands up, falls, stands up again, and falls again. Each fall teaches balance. Each attempt makes the legs stronger. That's how we learn anything. Not by planning the perfect step, but by taking the step and learning from where we land. If you wait until your product, your skill, or your plan is perfect, you are already too late. While you are still preparing, someone else is out there testing, failing, improving, and moving ahead. They are learning from the real world while you are stuck in your head. And when you finally start, you will discover that the world has already changed and your perfect plan no longer fits. Perfection in your mind is only a guess. It is built on assumptions, not on reality. Reality is messy. You can only discover what works and what doesn't by trying. Every action you take is like a small experiment. You get feedback, you adjust, and you move forward. I remember meeting people who wanted to start a business but kept saying, "I'm still researching." Years later, they were still researching. Meanwhile, others who started with half the knowledge had already built something, improved it over time, and found success. The difference wasn't in intelligence, it was in action. Perfection is a slow poison. It makes you believe that waiting is progress, but in reality, delaying destroys momentum. You may feel safe by not acting, but safety is an illusion. Every day you wait, your dream gets weaker, your energy fades, and your fear multiplies. Action, even imperfect action, is the medicine that keeps your dream alive. When you act, you create opportunities that you can't see from the starting line. You meet people, face challenges, and find solutions that never would have appeared in your imagination. The process itself opens doors. But if you don't move, those doors remain invisible. Think about technology companies. The most successful ones didn't launch with a perfect product. They launched with something simple, sometimes even ugly, but they kept improving it every day. If they had waited for perfection, their competitors would have taken the market first. Speed matters more than polish in the beginning. The same is true for personal goals. If you want to get fit, don't wait to buy the perfect shoes or find the perfect workout plan. Start moving. If you want to learn a new skill, don't wait until you've read every book about it. Begin practicing today. If you want to change your life, don't wait until everything around you is ready. It never will be. Perfection is not the starting point. It is the byproduct of hundreds of messy attempts. Action turns ideas into experience. Action turns fear into confidence. Action turns dreams into something you can actually touch. Waiting for perfection keeps everything locked in your mind, where it can never grow, never adapt, and never serve anyone. Most people rely on motivation to take action. They wait for that spark, that burst of energy, that emotional high that makes everything feel easy. Motivation feels good. It's exciting. It makes you believe you can achieve anything. But the problem with motivation is simple. It comes and it goes. Some days you wake up feeling ready to conquer the world, and other days you can't even find the energy to get out of bed. If you only work when you feel motivated, you will work very little. Discipline is different. Discipline is doing what you said you would do even when you don't feel like it. It's the ability to act according to your plan, not your mood. Discipline doesn't care if you are tired, bored, or uncomfortable. Discipline is the muscle that moves you forward when motivation is nowhere to be found. Motivation is like a friend who visits when life is exciting but disappears when things get hard. Discipline is like a partner who stays with you through every season, sunny days, and storms. If you depend on motivation, you will only take action when the conditions are perfect. But life will never give you perfect conditions for very long. Something will always be wrong. Your energy, your mood, your circumstances. Discipline is the tool that cuts through all of that. Think about an athlete training for the Olympics. Do you think they wake up every morning feeling excited to train? Many days, they feel sore, tired, and unmotivated. But they train anyway because their commitment is stronger than their feelings. This is discipline. It's not about waiting for the right feeling. It's about showing up regardless of how you feel. Motivation can start the engine, but it's discipline that keeps the car moving for thousands of miles. Without discipline, you will start many things but finish very few. Without discipline, you will always depend on luck, inspiration, or other people to push you. That is dangerous because those things are not in your control. Discipline is built through repetition. Every time you do something you don't feel like doing, you train your mind to understand that your feelings don't control your actions. It's like strengthening a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. In the beginning, it feels uncomfortable. Your mind will try to convince you to stop, to take a break, to wait until you feel ready. But over time, discipline becomes automatic. You stop negotiating with yourself. You simply do the work. Motivation makes you act fast, but discipline makes you act consistently. And consistency is where results live. You can be motivated for a week and see nothing change. But if you are disciplined for a year, you will transform your skills, your health, your career, and your life. Motivation gives you a spark. Discipline builds the fire. Many people fail not because they lack ambition, but because they wait to feel like working. They wait for that energy, that passion, that right moment before they move. But passion grows from progress, and progress comes from action. If you only move when you're in the mood, you will be stuck in the same place for years. Discipline is the act of making decisions once and then following through without reopening the discussion every day. If you decide to wake up early, you do it whether you feel like it or not. If you decide to exercise, you do it whether you're tired or not. This removes the mental energy wasted on excuses. You stop asking yourself, do I feel like it today? And instead, focus on what needs to be done. The world rewards those who can keep moving when the excitement fades. Anyone can work hard when they're motivated. Few can work hard when they're not. That's why discipline is rare, and that's why it's powerful. Most people think they need to make a huge leap to change their life. They imagine quitting their job, starting a big business, moving to a new country, or doing something dramatic overnight. But real progress doesn't usually happen in big, sudden moves. Real progress is built step by step in small, consistent actions that add up over time. When you take a small step, you might feel like you're moving too slowly. You might think it's not enough to make a difference. But here's the truth. The first small step is what breaks the weight of an action. It's like pushing a heavy car. In the beginning, it feels impossible to move. But if you keep pushing, even a few inches, the car starts to roll, and each push becomes easier than the last. That is momentum. Momentum is powerful because it feeds itself. One small step creates progress. Progress builds confidence, and confidence inspires more action. You don't need to see the entire path ahead. You only need to see the next step and take it. The moment you move, you shift from thinking to doing, from planning to creating. Too many people get trapped in overthinking. They imagine all the possible outcomes, all the risks, all the challenges, until they feel overwhelmed and do nothing. But when you focus on just one small action, the overwhelm disappears. You stop worrying about the entire mountain and start climbing one rock at a time. Think about learning a language. If you study for 10 minutes a day, it might feel like nothing. But after a year, you've studied for over 60 hours. Those hours build skills, and skills open opportunities. It's not the size of each study session that matters. It's the fact that you keep showing up. The same is true in business. Many great companies didn't start with massive investments or perfect plans. They started with a small product, a small team, and a small idea. They learned from each step, improved, and grew. Without those small beginnings, there would have been no big success. Small steps are also important because they remove excuses. Anyone can take one step. If you say, I'll run a marathon, you might feel intimidated and never start. But if you say, I'll walk for 5 minutes, it feels easy and you'll do it. That small walk might lead to a jog, and that jog might lead to running. Action grows naturally when you start small. Momentum doesn't require speed, it requires movement. Even slow movement keeps you ahead of those who are standing still. And once you have momentum, you can build speed later. The important thing is to keep moving no matter how small the step feels. One of the biggest advantages of starting small is that it gives you room to make mistakes without destroying everything. If you take one small step and fail, you can adjust and take another. You can learn as you go without risking everything in one big move. This makes it easier to stay in the game long enough to succeed. Another hidden power of small steps is that they help you form habits. A habit is simply a repeated action, and small actions are easier to repeat than big ones. Once the habit is formed, it becomes automatic. You no longer rely on motivation or willpower. Your momentum carries you forward. If you want to write a book, start with one paragraph a day. If you want to save money, start with $1 a day. If you want to get fit, start with one push-up a day. The magic is not in the size of the action, but in the fact that you are acting. Small steps don't just take you forward, they change how you see yourself. You stop being a dreamer and start becoming a doer. Many people believe they need courage before they can take action. They wait until they feel brave enough to make a move, speak up, or take a risk. But courage is not something you have in full supply before you start. Courage is something you build along the way. The act of starting is what creates the courage to keep going. When you stand on the edge of something new, fear feels big. You imagine all the things that can go wrong, the failures, the embarrassment, the losses. Fear is loud before the first step. But the moment you start, the focus shifts. You stop thinking about the fear and start thinking about the task. You move from imagining the danger to facing the reality. And reality is often less scary than the picture in your head. Think about the first time you tried something new, whether it was speaking in public, starting a job, or learning a skill. Before you began, your hands might have been shaking, your heart beating fast. But once you were in the middle of it, you began to adapt. The fear started to fade, replaced by concentration and action. That's because courage doesn't erase fear. It teaches you to move forward despite it. Starting creates small wins, and small wins grow courage. Each step you take without giving up sends a message to your mind. I can handle this. With each attempt, the unknown becomes more familiar, and the familiar becomes less frightening. The more you act, the more your confidence grows. Not because the situation gets easier, but because you get stronger. The problem with waiting for courage before starting is that fear feeds on delay. The longer you wait, the more your mind has time to invent reasons why you shouldn't move. The imagined problems grow larger than the real ones. But once you start, action cuts off fear's food supply. You stop feeding it with what ifs and start replacing it with what's next. Even the most confident people in the world feel fear before starting something important. The difference is they don't wait for the fear to go away. They start anyway, knowing that courage will meet them along the road, not at the starting line. In business, this is why many successful entrepreneurs say their early days were the scariest. They didn't know all the answers. They didn't have certainty, but they took the first step, maybe launching a small product, making the first sale, or meeting the first client. Each action brought experience, and each experience built courage to take the next bigger step. Courage grows because action gives you proof. It shows you that you can survive mistakes, adapt to challenges, and find solutions you didn't think you had. Without starting, you have no proof, only theories, doubts, and fears. Starting turns fear into feedback, and feedback into strength. Think about a soldier before battle. Training prepares them, but the first real fight is still terrifying. However, once the first moment passes and they are in action, instincts take over and courage builds with each move. The same is true for anyone facing a challenge, whether it's starting a company, speaking on stage, or making a life change. The fear is sharpest at the beginning, but the courage is strongest after you begin. You don't have to start with big, bold moves to grow courage. Even small actions can plant the seed. Sending one email, making one phone call, or taking one step toward your goal is enough to begin the process. Once the first step is taken, the second becomes easier, and the third easier. Still, the courage grows not in a sudden explosion, but in steady layers, each built on the one before. The more often you start, the more natural courage becomes. You begin to trust yourself, not because you think nothing will go wrong, but because you know you can handle it when it does. This trust is what allows people to take bigger risks over time. not recklessly, but with the quiet confidence that they can face whatever comes. Fear is like a shadow. From a distance, it looks huge and dark, stretching far beyond your path. But when you walk toward it, you see that it's not as big as you imagined. Most of the fear we feel lives in our mind, not in reality. We picture the worst possible outcomes. We create stories of disaster and we convince ourselves those stories are certain. The truth is, fear usually loses strength the moment we confront it. Avoiding fear makes it grow. The more we turn away from it, the bigger it becomes in our imagination. It's like a wild animal that senses hesitation. It becomes louder and more aggressive when it knows you're afraid. But if you stand in front of it, you realize it's not as dangerous as it pretends to be. Think about the first time you spoke in front of a group. The thought of standing there made your heart race, your hands sweat, your mind rehearse every possible mistake. But when you actually started talking, the fear began to fade. You were too busy focusing on your words, on the faces in front of you, on the moment itself. That's the power of facing fear. It forces you into the present, where fear has less room to live. Fear is a master of illusion. It magnifies uncertainty. It highlights every risk and it hides every possibility of success. The mind is good at protecting us from danger, but it doesn't know the difference between real danger and imagined danger. The only way to find out is to face it. Action turns uncertainty into clarity, and clarity makes fear smaller. When you face fear, you begin to gather evidence that you can handle it. You learn that the conversation you were afraid to have is just a conversation. The rejection you feared doesn't destroy you. The challenge you worried about is actually manageable. Each time you face something scary, you take away a little bit of its power. In business and in life, the people who move ahead are not those who never feel fear, but those who feel it and walk toward it anyway. They understand that fear is a signal, not a stop sign. Sometimes fear is there to warn you of real danger, but many times it's just your mind resisting change. When you move toward it, you discover which one it is. Fear can also be a teacher. It shows you where growth lies. If something scares you, it's often because it's important. The job interview, the investment, the conversation, the decision. These are moments that shape the future. If you avoid them, you avoid the growth that comes with them. Facing fear doesn't mean the fear disappears instantly. At first, it might still be there whispering doubts in your ear, but each time you take a step forward, its voice gets quieter. You start to replace those whispers with your own experiences. Proof that you can survive discomfort, proof that you can navigate uncertainty, proof that you are stronger than you thought. One of the most damaging habits is letting fear make your decisions. Fear will always choose the smaller path, the safer path, the path with less risk, but also less reward. If you let fear lead, you'll stay in the same place even if you're unhappy there. Facing fear doesn't guarantee success, but it guarantees movement, and movement is the only way to discover what's possible. The first time you face a fear, it may still feel big, but the second time it feels smaller, the third time smaller still. Over time, what once seemed impossible becomes normal. That's how people go from avoiding challenges to embracing them. Not because the fear is gone, but because they've seen it up close and realized it's not the giant it pretended to be. When fear is faced, it stops being a story in your head and becomes a moment in your life. Moments can be managed. They can be handled. They can be learned from. The more you practice this, the more you realize that fear isn't a wall blocking your path, but a doorway you have to walk through to reach the next stage of your journey. Opportunities don't wait forever. They appear. They offer a chance, and then they move on to someone who is ready. Many people miss these chances not because they lack talent or resources, but because they protect themselves with excuses. An excuse feels harmless in the moment, but every excuse you make is a closed door to something that could have changed your life. Excuses are comfortable. They give you a reason to stay where you are without feeling guilty. I'm too busy. I don't have enough money. I'll start when things calm down. These words feel safe because they remove the pressure to act. But comfort is only an illusion. While you are explaining why you can't, someone else is proving that they can. Opportunities often come disguised as hard work, risk, or inconvenience. They rarely appear at the perfect time. If you wait for the day when you have more time, more money, more energy, you will keep waiting until the chance is gone. Excuses make it easy to tell yourself you're not ready. But the truth is, nobody is ever completely ready. Readiness is built by taking the opportunity and growing into it. Excuses also limit vision. When you decide something is impossible, your mind stops looking for solutions. You focus on why it won't work instead of how it could work. This mental shutdown keeps you trapped in the same circle, repeating the same reasons while others are learning, trying, failing, and eventually succeeding. In business, I have seen countless people with brilliant ideas talk themselves out of them. They say the market is too crowded, the competition too strong, the risk too high. Meanwhile, someone else with less knowledge, fewer connections, and less money takes the same idea, works through the challenges, and turns it into something real. The difference isn't in skill, it's in the absence of excuses. Excuses are dangerous because they sound reasonable. You can convince yourself and even convince others that you have a good reason for not acting, but no matter how logical they seem, they block progress. Every time you use one, you train yourself to look for a reason not to move instead of finding a way forward. Fear often hides inside excuses. You might say you're waiting for the right time, but deep down you might be afraid to fail. You might say you don't have the right tools, but deep down you're afraid to look unprepared. By disguising fear as logic, excuses protect your comfort zone while stealing your future. Opportunities are like doors that open for a short time. If you hesitate, if you explain to yourself why you shouldn't walk through, the door will close. It might never open again in the same way. Life rarely gives the same chance twice. Even if a similar one appears later, the timing, the people, and the circumstances will be different. When you remove excuses, you force yourself to look at the opportunity honestly. You ask, if I couldn't use this reason, what would I do? That's when you start to think creatively, to see possibilities instead of problems. It's when you stop protecting yourself from failure and start preparing yourself for success. Excuses feel small, but over time they build walls around you. Each one adds another layer until you can no longer see the opportunities outside. Breaking through that wall starts with refusing to let yourself hide behind explanations. If you can replace the habit of excusing with the habit of acting, you give yourself the chance to discover how many doors were open to you all along. The people who succeed are not the ones with perfect conditions. They are the ones who step forward despite imperfect ones. They take the chance, they accept the challenge, and they deal with the problems as they come. Every excuse they could have made is still there, but they choose to walk past it and toward the possibility in front of them. No one will care about your dreams as much as you do. No one will wake you up in the morning, take you by the hand, and drag you toward your goals every single day. People may encourage you, inspire you, or even guide you for a while, but at the end of the day, the responsibility to move forward is yours. If you cannot push yourself, you will stop every time things get hard. Relying on others for your drive is dangerous because their energy will not always match your needs. Friends might be busy, mentors might be far away, and motivation from the outside is always temporary. Self-push is the engine that keeps you moving when no one is watching, when no one is clapping, and when no one even knows what you are doing. There will be days when you don't feel like working, when your body is tired, when your mind wants to rest, and when your emotions try to convince you to quit. These are the moments that define your future. If you can only work when you feel good, you will never finish anything worth doing. Self-push means you move whether you feel ready or not, whether you feel supported or not. In the beginning, it might be easy to move forward because of excitement. A new goal, a fresh plan, an inspiring idea, they all give you a burst of energy. But this energy will fade. What remains after the excitement is gone is your discipline to push yourself forward. Without that discipline, you will stop as soon as the road gets steep. Self-push is not about ignoring rest or burning yourself out. It's about refusing to let comfort decide your limits. It means you know the difference between being genuinely exhausted and simply feeling lazy. It means you refuse to negotiate with excuses. It means you make a promise to yourself and you keep it even when the world is silent. Think about the people who achieve extraordinary things. They are not superhuman. They simply refuse to depend on external pressure to keep going. They set their own standards higher than anyone else would set for them. When they fall short, they don't wait for someone to tell them to try again. They tell themselves. Self-push builds resilience. Every time you make yourself work when you don't want to, you strengthen your mental muscles. You teach yourself that feelings are not the boss of your actions. You learn that you can function without waiting for inspiration. You become dependable to yourself, and that is one of the most valuable qualities a person can have in business, in fitness, in learning. The pattern is the same. The people who keep growing are the ones who can sit down and work when they are bored, tired, or uninspired. They don't need a deadline to panic them into action. They create their own urgency, their own pressure, and their own accountability. Self-push is also the answer. When life gets unfair, sometimes the world will not reward your effort right away. You might work hard and see no results for weeks or months. Many people quit here telling themselves it's pointless. But if you can push yourself through this period, you often find that results were just around the corner. The habit of self-push also prepares you for independence. If your progress depends on others checking on you, motivating you, or reminding you, you are not in control of your future. But when you take full ownership of your movement, you can adapt to any situation. Whether you have a team or you're alone, whether you have support or none at all, every time you rely on self-push, you prove to yourself that you are capable of moving without permission, without applause, and without someone telling you it's time to start. Over time, this becomes part of who you are. Someone who doesn't wait for the right conditions but creates them through consistent, determined action. Most people wait until they feel fully prepared before they take a leap. They tell themselves, I'll start when I have more skills, when I have more money, when I have more experience. But the truth is, you will never feel completely ready. There will always be something you don't know, something you don't have, or something you wish were different. Waiting for readiness is another way of avoiding the discomfort of starting. The reality is that readiness comes after you commit, not before. The moment you say yes to something, you begin to grow into it. When you lock yourself into a goal, your mind starts working differently. You stop thinking like an outsider looking in, and you start thinking like someone who must make it work. You start searching for solutions instead of excuses. Think about how many opportunities are lost because people hesitate. They see a chance, but they tell themselves, I need to prepare more. Months later, that chance belongs to someone else. The difference wasn't in talent. It was in the willingness to commit before having all the answers. Committing early forces you to adapt quickly. It puts you in situations where you have no choice but to learn fast, solve problems, and grow. You discover strengths you didn't know you had because the commitment demands them. Without that pressure, you might never reach for them. In business, this principle is everywhere. Many successful entrepreneurs didn't launch their companies because they felt ready. They launched because they had an idea and they refused to wait. They learned as they went. They made mistakes and they adjusted along the way. If they had waited until their plan was perfect, they would still be planning today. Fear of failure often hides behind the idea of not ready yet. We tell ourselves we need more preparation, but what we really mean is we want more certainty. We want a guarantee that things will work out, but commitment is a leap of faith, not blind faith, but faith in your ability to figure things out as you go. You don't need certainty. You need the decision to start. The human mind is incredibly resourceful when it's backed into a corner. If you commit to something you care about, your brain will work overtime to find ways to succeed. You'll make calls you wouldn't normally make, work hours you wouldn't normally work, and try ideas you wouldn't normally consider. This creativity and drive don't appear when you're still on the fence. Committing before you feel ready also builds resilience. You learn how to handle unexpected problems, how to work under pressure, and how to recover from mistakes. These are skills you can't fully develop in theory. They come from being in the middle of real challenges. Some of the most life-changing opportunities are ones you step into without full preparation. A new job you don't feel qualified for, a project you've never done before, a goal that scares you. These situations stretch you far beyond your comfort zone, and in the process, they expand your capabilities. When you commit first, you shift your identity. You stop thinking like someone who is trying and start thinking like someone who is doing. This mental shift is powerful because it changes how you approach problems. Instead of asking, can I do this, you start asking, how will I do this? That small change in language moves you from hesitation to action. It's easy to admire people who seem fearless in taking big steps, but most of them weren't fearless at the start. They were just willing to commit despite the fear. They understood that if they waited for the fear to disappear, they would never move. By committing first, they gave themselves no escape route, and that forced them to rise to the challenge. Opportunities have a short life. If you let them pass while you're still preparing, they may not return in the same form. Committing before you feel ready ensures you're in the game while the opportunity is alive, even if you have to figure things out as you play. Once you're in motion, every skill you lack becomes something you can learn, every obstacle becomes something you can solve, and every doubt becomes something you can prove wrong through action. Success is rarely the result of one giant action. It's almost always the result of small, consistent actions repeated over time. Just like money grows when you invest it regularly, effort grows when you put it in every single day. At first, the progress feels slow, almost invisible. But as the days, weeks, and months pass, those small efforts begin to multiply into something much bigger than you imagined. Think about water dripping onto a stone. One drop changes nothing. But after thousands of drops over months and years, the stone begins to change shape. Your daily effort works the same way. It might feel like nothing is happening at first, but over time it shapes your skills, your habits, and your future. The challenge is that daily effort doesn't give you instant rewards. In the beginning, you might be working hard without seeing results. This is where most people quit. They think if I can't see progress, it's not working. But the truth is, the most important growth happens beneath the surface, just like the roots of a tree. You can't see them at first, but they're building a foundation strong enough to support everything that comes later. Daily effort compounds because it builds momentum. Every time you show up, you make it easier to show up again tomorrow. Each repetition strengthens the habit, and habits are what carry you through the days when motivation is low. The more consistent you are, the less energy it takes to keep going. It also compounds in skill. The more often you practice something, the faster you improve. A musician who practices for 20 minutes every day will progress far more in a year than someone who practices for 3 hours once a month. The frequency of effort matters as much as the size of it because it keeps your skills sharp and your mind engaged. In business, daily effort compounds in relationships, knowledge, and trust. Every email you send, every call you make, every problem you solve adds to your reputation. People begin to notice that you're dependable. Opportunities start to come to you because you've been building credibility day after day. Daily effort also compounds in confidence. Every time you do the work, you give yourself proof that you can be relied on, not just by others, but by yourself. You start to trust your own discipline, and that trust makes it easier to take on bigger challenges. The compounding effect works in reverse too. If you miss days, if you let effort slide, the loss also builds over time. Just as small actions can grow into big success, small neglects can grow into big problems. Skipping one workout doesn't matter much, but skipping often builds the habit of quitting. Avoiding one task doesn't hurt much, but avoiding many builds a backlog that becomes overwhelming. Daily effort works best when it becomes non-negotiable. You don't debate with yourself about whether you'll work today. You simply do it. This removes the mental resistance and keeps the compounding process alive. Even on bad days, even with small contributions, you keep adding to the total. Over time, the total becomes something powerful. The beauty of compounding is that the benefits are exponential. In the early stages, it feels like you're putting in so much for so little, but there comes a point, a tipping point, when the results start to grow rapidly. The skills you've built, the relationships you've nurtured, the habits you've strengthened, all start to work together, producing results that are far greater than the sum of your efforts. This is why small daily actions are more effective than bursts of extreme effort followed by long breaks. Consistency beats intensity over time. The person who improves by just 1% each day will be far ahead of someone who works hard for a short while and then stops. That 1% doesn't sound like much, but over months and years, it transforms into something remarkable. When you understand how daily effort compounds, you stop chasing quick wins and start focusing on steady progress. You realize that each day's work is like adding another brick to a wall. One brick doesn't look like much, but keep adding bricks every day and one day you'll have a fortress. Discipline is hard, waking up early when you want to sleep in, working on your goals when you'd rather relax, saying no to distractions when they seem so tempting. These moments test you. Discipline demands effort, sacrifice, and sometimes discomfort. But as heavy as discipline feels in the moment, it is nothing compared to the weight of regret. Regret is not just an emotion, it is a burden that follows you for years. Discipline might make you uncomfortable for an hour or a day, but regret can stay with you for a lifetime. When you choose comfort today over discipline, you're not escaping pain. You're only delaying it, and it comes back much heavier. The pain of discipline is sharp and temporary. You feel it when you push yourself to train, when you force yourself to study, when you hold yourself to a standard that others ignore. But once the work is done, the pain fades and is replaced by pride, progress, and results. The pain of regret, however, is dull but constant. It sits in your mind like an unanswered question. What if I had tried harder? What if I hadn't given up? What if I had started earlier? Regret grows with time. A missed opportunity today might feel small, but years later, you realize what it cost you. The skills you could have mastered, the career you could have built, the life you could have lived. This is when the weight becomes unbearable because you can't go back. Discipline always gives you another chance tomorrow. But regret doesn't work that way. Discipline demands payment up front. It asks you to work now so you can enjoy later. Regret charges interest. The longer you avoid discipline, the more the cost grows. One missed day becomes a missed week, then a missed month, until the gap between where you are and where you could have been is so wide you can barely see the other side. People often confuse freedom with doing whatever they feel like in the moment. But real freedom comes from discipline. When you control your habits, your time, and your actions, you control your future. Without discipline, you become a prisoner to regret, wishing you had acted differently when it's too late to change the outcome. Discipline might mean saying no to a night out so you can work on your project. It might mean waking up early to prepare for an important opportunity. In those moments, you might feel like you're missing out, but what you're really doing is investing in a future where you don't have to look back and say, "I wish I had been more serious when it mattered." A regret steals joy from the present because it keeps your mind stuck in the past. You see others achieving what you once dreamed of, and you know you had the chance but didn't take it. That kind of pain is far heavier than the discomfort of discipline. With discipline, you carry the weight for a short while and then it turns into strength. With regret, you carry it for as long as you remember what you lost. In every difficult choice, there are two pains to choose from: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The pain of discipline weighs ounces. The pain of regret weighs tons. One builds you, the other breaks you. When you practice discipline, you are choosing a short-term sacrifice for a long-term reward. When you avoid discipline, you are choosing short-term comfort for a long-term cost. That cost is not just missed opportunities, but also the loss of self-respect. You start to question your own ability to follow through, and that doubt eats away at your confidence. Discipline is never easy, but it is always worth it. Regret is easy to earn, but impossible to erase. You can recover from a hard day of work, but you cannot recover lost years of inaction. Every time you choose discipline, you are protecting yourself from the silent, heavy weight that comes from knowing you could have done more but didn't. In conclusion, life will never hand you the perfect moment to start. The truth is, waiting is the easiest thing in the world and also the most expensive. Every day you delay is a day you never get back. Success does not belong to those who simply think about their goals. It belongs to those who act even when they feel unprepared, scared, or tired. Forcing yourself to take action is not about ignoring fear, doubt, or uncertainty. It's about moving forward despite them. The first step may feel small, but it creates momentum. And once momentum builds, it becomes easier to keep going. You will discover that courage comes after action. Discipline grows stronger with practice, and opportunities open only to those already in motion. You don't need to see the whole path to start walking. You don't need every answer before you begin. What matters is that you move today, not tomorrow, because time will pass anyway, and the choice is yours. Let it pass filled with excuses, or let it pass filled with progress. The people who change their lives are not the ones who wait, but the ones who decide right now to force themselves to take action.